Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today, I am very happy to present an early impression of the best DIXIT and ZAK fragrance I've had a chance to try. And I'm not going to sit up here and claim to be some DIXIT and ZAK connoisseur, although it is a brand that has been showing up on my channel lately. So recently I reviewed Rising Cologne, which was a wop wop for me. And then I have smelled and will review very soon Emperor's Court. We are still working on the review of that. Thank you to Peter from Fragrance View for sending me this bottle. And so I'm going to review this bad boy at some point in the future. But today we're going to talk about sort of the gem in the hat of the brand of DIXIT and ZAK. To me, when I think of DIXIT and ZAK, this is the line that comes to mind. And I think there's 3 or 4 that they've put out so far. And this one's called Rising Mysore 2. Okay? So, there was a Rising Mysore, which came out in 2019. I think in 2020, they came out with Rising Mysore 2. And then I think 2021, they came out with number 3. And then maybe a year or 2 ago, they came out with the Extra. And so it's a line for this house that is, I would say, when someone thinks of DIXIT and ZAK, for me, as sort of an outsider to the house, right? When someone thinks of DIXIT and ZAK, this is the fragrance that comes to mind, Rising Mysore. And I'll tell you what, luckily, it does not disappoint. However, there's a couple things that you have to understand about the fragrance, first of all, if you're going to enjoy it. The very first thing is that this fragrance is supposed to sort of recreate a natural sandalwood accord. So if you're used to smelling the synthetic, punchy, heavy sandalwoods like Javanol or other sandalwood notes that you smell from the mainstream designers, this will seem a little strange to you. The second thing is there's a little bit of an exotic smell to this fragrance. It's like an Indian spicy. It's probably the best explanation that I've heard of this scent is from Brandon from Therapeutics Fragrance Channel. I really wish that guy would come back. He was damn good. But he called this a Indian barbershop fragrance. And I thought, damn, that is absolutely spot on, because the opening is an Indian barbershop fragrance with lots of many strange spices, which we'll talk about. So if you're in the West, you may smell this and think, man, this is a little strange at first. Maybe even put you off a little bit because of the way that the spices are done. If you're a perfume connoisseur or addict, you're going to smell in the top, mid, and base a brilliant sandalwood accord. It's there throughout the entire fragrance. In fact, in the top of the fragrance, it's sort of hiding backstage, getting ready to come on, but you can smell it. You can smell that sort of milky, buttery, very sensual. Sandalwood is one of those notes that I would say is one of the most calming notes in all of perfumery. There is nothing better when you're stressed out than putting on a beautiful sandalwood fragrance. In fact, I have been very blessed because I've got some real vintage sandalwood. Russian Adam sent me this. This is Santal Mindy from 1906. And this is real Mysore, which is almost impossible to find in this form like this. And I've worn this on my skin multiple times, actually. I'll just take a toothpick and put some on the skin. And the experience is almost like a religious, it's like your brain just goes into pure relaxation mode. I had a day yesterday. I had quite the day yesterday. And there were some things that had me banging the desk, you know, screaming curse words. I had to get up and just walk away a couple times. We've all had those days, right? That is the perfect day for a scent like Rising Mysore. And one tip that Nikhil from Exotic Scents gave people within the last 5 or 6 years or so is if you're trying to maybe get the profile of Mysore, and I didn't have to buy these because I've been very blessed to have the greatest subscribers on earth, but some of the folks from around the globe who subscribe to my channel sent me this. Actually, I've gotten 3 Mysore soaps. One comes like this, in this little clam looking thing, and it's called, the brand is called Millennium, and the soap basically looks like this. And on the front of it, it actually says Mysore Sandal Soap. You can see right there, Mysore. And this one literally says Mysore Sandal Soap. There's the packaging right there. But what's interesting is both of these are the exact same brand. So this is, you can see from the sticker, Karnataka Soaps and Detergent Limited right there. And you can see right here the name on this one, exact same. And so if you've ever wanted to sort of get the profile of real Mysore, right? They actually put real Mysore in these soaps, right? And you can see right here, it actually says government soap factory. So the Indian government is involved because Mysore is literally, I would say, rationed by the Indian government. That's a good word for it. It is literally rationed. So I've used one of these, or maybe if it wasn't this brand, it was a very similar brand. I can't remember exactly, but I've used one already, and it's brilliant. It was a brilliant. I actually used it today. It's about done though. You know how when a bar of soap gets really small and you're almost at the point where it's not worth it. It's at that point. So I'm gonna crack one of these open very soon and switch to one of these here. But, and I'm going to save one for reference just to sort of be able to smell. But if you want to smell the profile of real Mysore without spending huge amounts of money, because real Mysore in a fragrance is extremely expensive nowadays, then that is a way to go. That's a little bit of a hack. Now, there is some controversy with this over the Mysore inside of the Rising Mysore series, which we'll talk about that as we go on, okay? But let's talk about the fragrance. And I just want to read you a little blurb, a little bit about the fragrance from the website of DIXIT and ZAK, okay? The idea of Rising Mysore is to form an immersive, sacred, soulful, and mystical connection. So look at the words, soulful, sacred, mystical, right? There's actually a temple in India, if I'm not mistaken, that is literally built out of Mysore sandalwood. And so it's supposed to have this very contemplative, very relaxing, very calming effect on the human body when you walk into imagine being in a temple that is built with Mysore sandalwood. And so it says that the charm is like a bliss, like basking in the sun, a sense of unity in prayers, a healing of meditation. So again, listen to the language, a calming breeze, calm, right? Bringing hope and relaxation. So in effect, the perfume uses and opens with a zesty, white, spicy essence, a hint of rose damascena on a creamy sandalwood, combined with dulo patchouli dance, owing to the holy basil, which is also known as tulsi, with hatkori lime, Italian lavender, jasmine sambac, and other citrus elements. The garam masala patli from the Indian spice family uniquely, subtly blends together all parts with a smooth transition from heart to dry down, resulting in therapeutic nuances. And it goes on. The spicy notes ascend the dry perfume. And it continues on with sort of just a quick little blurb as to how it closes. But I want to give you my impression as to how this fragrance develops on skin. And let's talk a little bit about the note listing. So let me just read you the note listing real quick so you have an idea of what we're up against. And then we'll talk about my impressions of the scent. So the top is holy basil, which is that tulsi I was telling you. Neroli, pink pepper, lavender, key lime, orange, citrus macroterra, which they mentioned in the write-up, damask rose, jasmine sambac, lemon, orange blossom, and pink grapefruit. That's the top. The heart is bay leaf, black pepper, cardamom, Ceylon cinnamon, clove, jasmine grandiflorum, patchouli, pimento, rosemary, star anise, tuberose, and ylang ylang, with a base of frankincense, Indian sandalwood, Java patchouli, myrrh, tonka bean, and vanilla absolute. So the first thing that I have to say is if you watch some of the reviews on YouTube, which I don't always do, but every now and then I'll just click one or two just to see what other people said. And a couple folks I listened to called this an Oriental, and I was like, this is not an Oriental, at least not to my nose, wearing it. Even though there are some maybe notes like cinnamon and stuff like that, and I know in India, many people think, well, it's an Indian perfume house, it must be an Oriental. This is not an Oriental. This literally, the best descriptor, I think, comes from Brandon from Therapeutics Fragrances, which is this Indian barbershop fragrance. Imagine that with a Mysore veil in the back, okay? The veil part is my addition. The Indian Barbershop fragrance moniker is Brandon's from Therapeutic Fragrances. And so this fragrance basically opens up, you know, when you sort of, you know, when you shave, for the men out there, okay, this fragrance can also be worn for by women easily. I think this is easily unisex. There's nothing that makes this traditionally masculine or traditionally feminine. It's actually beautifully right down the middle. But for the guys out there, if you've ever shaved and you applied aftershave, old style, you dump it in your hands and you put it on your face and you're like, it burns for a couple seconds, right? So just imagine that cooling feeling of burning, and that descriptor of the Indian barbershop, like I was saying earlier. It gives you almost this stinging sort of brace. There's almost like a bracefulness, right? Remember the old school masculine products from like 100 years ago, Skin Bracer and stuff like that? There's this bracing coolness to the perfume, right? And whenever you spray it on, really the aromatic portions are there right from the beginning, and your nose picks them up in an Indian style, if that makes sense. So I actually have a 2-hour dry down here, and I have a 5-hour dry down right here. Okay, so I've got the late dry down because this fragrance only lasts about 6 or 7 hours on my skin. It's not a super long lasting fragrance, but remember, this is all natural. This is 100% natural. So you're not gonna get the Amber Max and the Ambrosinides and all that stuff. This is 100% natural perfume. So the scent profile basically opens up with that citrusy herbal notes right up top, okay? And it's a blend in the beginning to my nose of lavender and basil. And so it's actually a specific type of basil that is naturally grown or native to India, if you will. And that basil is called holy basil, or that Tulsi I was telling you about is another way to describe it. There are many people that think that it has very specific health benefits, okay? But in a nutshell, it's a plant that's native to India, and some people actually refer to it as hot basil because in food, it makes the food very peppery, spicy, almost chili-like. And so it adds a very specific taste in food, but in the perfume composition, it almost adds this slightly floral, almost like a light lemon. So imagine like a lightly citrused lemon scent with a very slight hint of clove, okay? And that clove note actually comes on stronger as it dries down because there literally is a clove note as it dries down. So it almost like takes the baton from the holy basil, and the clove note is really amped up as the fragrance goes on. But nothing in this fragrance is overkill. Nothing stands out. Nothing offends. Everything is, even though I mentioned that it is a little bit bracing in the beginning, I still think this fragrance is very, very likable for the majority of noses. I don't think there's anything in this fragrance that would really, truly put some people off. There may be some cultural differences between what we're used to smelling in the West versus what people, let's say in India, where DIXIT and ZAKs are located, are used to smelling. But I don't think there's anything in this perfume that makes it quote-unquote challenging, okay? So, and many forget, the other thing to mention too is that many forget that lavender actually has a floral side to it, right? Many people think of the herbal aspects of lavender, but also there are lavenders that give off more of this floral aspect. And here it has this very invigorating floral type opening. And all of these sort of spicy aromatic openings sort of sit on this bed of florals, because I mentioned things like orange blossom, neroli, tuberose, ylang ylang, jasmine. The jasmine is pretty prominent as far as the florals go. You can pick out a little bit of this white floral aspect to it, but it's not the traditional white floral that you're probably thinking. It's not like just smelling jasmine sambac or anything like that. It's really blended in a way where the aromatics are sort of allowed to shine. It's allowed to sit on a little bit of a bed of floral, and all the while the veil of that Mysore is there in the background. You can smell its musky, buttery sweetness sort of, you know, right there behind the scenes, getting ready to come on stage, if you will. And so basically, what the fragrance does, it starts out like a citrus herbal aromatic fragrance that slowly loses those aromatic herbal facets and begins to bring in notes that are heavier. Notes of why I think somebody you know, these are the notes of the reason why I think some people, mistake this fragrance for an Oriental, because it has things like patchouli, and it has things like cinnamon, and it has some of these heavier, it has some of these heavier notes, if you will. I mentioned the Ceylon cinnamon. There's a little bit of cardamom, that cooling cardamom spice, but it blends beautifully with the star anise. So you can see kind of this spiced blend, right? Think about the barbershop fragrances that we're used to smelling in the West. Star anise, this peppery spiciness there's some definite similarities. I know that Jacques Cavalier, who made things like Rive Gauche Pour Homme and stuff like that, loved using star anise and opium pour homme and stuff like that, right? And so the star anise is in here with the florals, right? And even though it brings in these quote-unquote heavier notes, the Ceylon cinnamon, the patchouli, the myrrh, the incense, all this good stuff, it remains light. The fragrance remains light and airy. So remember, rising Mysore, right? It remains light and airy and very wearable. I know, going back to Brandon, who has done probably the best review on this fragrance. Well, he reviewed the original, but I think the Rising Mysore 1, 2, 3 have very similarities to them. I'm not a DIXIT and ZAK, huge fanboy, as you can see. This is only the second time I think I've reviewed a fragrance on my channel from the house. Pretty soon there will be a third when it comes to Emperor's Court. But a house that does not get very much attention on my channel. But I think Rising Mysore, the original, and then number 2, and then number 3, all have a very similar scent profile, if you will. If anyone knows the differences, leave them in the comments. But so the fragrance remains light. In Mysore, you have to remember that Mysore sandalwood is just one specific type of sandalwood. And there's many different types of sandalwood. There is New Caledonian, there's Australian, there's all different types of sandalwood that you can smell, and they all have their own facets. Some of them are more floral, some of them are heavier and thicker and richer and punchier. Some of them are naturally punchier. Some of them have like a pickle aspect to them. Some of them have all of these different, touches to the sandalwood. Some of them feel more sparkly. Mysore specifically feels sort of musky and very buttery and with a slight floral touch, almost like you're smelling the tiny little flower that grows off of the sandalwood tree itself. There's little red flowers that grow off of them. Imagine smelling like a musty, milky, creamy sandalwood with a little bit of a floral tinge. That's the Mysore. And the reason why Mysore is sort of so popular, or has garnered this sort of Hall of Fame, image about itself, is because many of the French houses used Mysore sandalwood all throughout the, upcoming growth of the perfume houses from the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, even into the 90s. Even into the very early, 2000, I think there were still houses using real Mysore. But what ended up happening is these big houses, the Diors, the Chanels, the Guerlains, the Jean Patous of the world, right? They basically harvested Mysore sandalwood to a point where it was going to be completely extinct. If the Indian government didn't step in, there wasn't going to be any more Mysore. And so it wasn't like, I don't think Mysore was like this, this super sandalwood that these houses used. I think that was what was available. And so they used it. And because they used it, and because that what was available, that's what our grandfathers and fathers and mothers and grandmothers kind of grew up on smelling, and great-grandmothers. And they grew up smelling this particular type of sandalwood. So it's sort of grown in the collective conscience in a way. And so for me, just sandalwood in general, I'm a fan of sandalwood. It doesn't have to be Mysore. I've learned to love all different types of sandalwood species that I've smelled. In fact, I was going to show you a couple of the different types here, but I grabbed the wrong one here, and I don't know if I'll be able to find it on the fly. I'm not even going to mess with it. But Russian Adam sent me some different types of sandalwood from across the globe, and smelling them, they each have their own very interesting facet, right? you know, I could easily come to appreciate each and every one of what they do. But this particular sandalwood here is meant to recreate Mysore, which is actually a very soft sandalwood. Real sandalwood, excuse me, in general, is soft. Real sandalwood is not, many of them are not sort of the big punch in the face that you're used to smelling, because what you're used to smelling when you go down to your local Macy's is a synthetic sandalwood. It's not real sandalwood. And so what makes this DIXIT and ZAK fragrance, to my mind, great, what pushes it into from just a good fragrance to a great fragrance to probably the best from the house. Although I do hear they have some animalic fragrances that I'm very excited to try. Maybe one day I'll get to. But, you know, because that's my love. I love the animalic dirty ouds and castoreum and civet and stuff like that. But real Mysore is sort of, you know, very soft and milky. And you get that when you're smelling this fragrance. And somehow they managed to keep it all throughout the perfume. So like this dry down that I just smelled, brilliant, brilliant Mysore Sandalwood Accord. Now, I say accord because there is a controversy, as my British folks would say. But there is a controversy about this because there actually is no Mysore note listed according to the website. According to DIXIT and ZAK's own website, they list multiple different types of sandalwood, one of which is Indian sandalwood. I think another one is something else, but no Mysore is actually listed. And so some people kind of were a little put off on that. You're calling the fragrance Rising Mysore, but there's no Mysore. But I take the other side of the argument, because Mysore is so rare and expensive that I would almost rather them create this Mysore Accord, right? And be able to price these bottles at $200 to $300 or whatever they were, then use real Mysore and have this be a $900 fragrance. That's just my personal opinion. And I think they did a brilliant job creating this Mysore Accord, if you will. It comes across as so real, milky, buttery, creamy, soft, gentle, classy, very elegant. Mysore is just this type of sandalwood in general, extremely elegant note. And if you're a sandalwood lover, when you smell this, you'll be in heaven. You'll be in pure bliss heaven. It's like, woo-saw. You just, what's that from? Anger Management or woo-saw. You just sort of let everything go, there is that feeling. And when you add it in with that sort of aromatic Indian barbershop opening with this very milky, creamy, soft, buttery undercurrent of the sandalwood, and once that aromatic, citric, Indian spiced opening burns away and you're left with, in the deep dry down, I enjoy the opening. I love the dry down because this is an all-natural fragrance, it doesn't dry down to these crap amber woods that we're so used to smelling. Nowadays, many perfumes you smell, even in the niche market, okay, just because something is $500 does not mean they're not taking the shortcuts that all the other houses are taking. And so many of the fragrances we're smelling nowadays, there'll be some sort of a top accord, and then it'll just dry down to these synthetic amber woods of some kind, right? It's a cop-out. It's turned into a cop-out note. And you don't smell that here. Here, you smell a fragrance that really feels like the DIXIT and ZAK guys spent time on the opening, the mid, and the beautiful dry down. And the dry down is pure sandalwood bliss with a little bit of incense. So think about it. Rising Mysore, right? That incense accord that they've sort of created here carries the Mysore into the dry down. So the Mysore is literally rising off of your skin. It's a brilliant name. I wish I liked Rising Cologne as much as I like this, because, you can buy right now on the DIXIT and ZAK's website, you can buy Rising Cologne for $165 for 100 mil. I just don't think it's worth it. When this was originally $220 for 100 mil, this was a damn steal. This is a hell of a fragrance. I just didn't get that from the new Rising Cologne, unfortunately, that they put out. But I'm very impressed with this. Very, very impressed. In fact, if you could go buy Rising Mysore 2 on the website right now for a couple $100, I would say go right now. don't hesitate. Go get it while you can. Unfortunately, you can't. This is a previous release from the house. But the blending, brilliant. The ingredients, brilliant. The composition, brilliant. Love this fragrance. The only thing I'm going to say is that if you are not used to this natural perfumery style, and if you're not used to what real not even what real Mysore, but what real sandalwood does, if you're not used to the real sandalwood oil smell, if you're used to the synthetic punchy, the best way to describe it is punchy, because you shouldn't smell a sandalwood fragrance from across the room. That's not how sandalwood is. And so there's like a generation of people now that think they're smelling sandalwood when they're not. They're smelling this modern synthetic replacement that is much more aggressive, and it's made so people can smell it more easily. And there's some fragrances that I think use that sandalwood very well. I'll review one of them very soon. It's actually I should have been prepared, but if you want a good example of a synthetic sandalwood fragrance, check out Diptyque Tam Dao. I happen to have the Eau de Parfum. I would love to also review the Eau de Toilette one day, but I think this is a very good sandalwood, synthetic sandalwood. I think it's very well done, but you can instantly smell the difference. I personally don't think there's a drop of real sandalwood in here. Now, I could be wrong, but it doesn't smell like Rising Mysore. It doesn't give me that real sandalwood feel that this does. But do I still enjoy Tam Dao? Yes, I do. I think Tam Dao is one of the better synthetic sandalwood fragrances. But getting to smell something like this that uses all naturals, that's done in this manner, and gives off this type of feel where it feels so natural I can compare it to the real thing, from over 100 years ago. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. And DIXIT and ZAK, you have redeemed yourself for the terrible Rising Cologne review that I gave you. It wasn't terrible. It was just, I expected more from this Rising series, that people went crazy for this stuff. So I guess I should have reviewed this first, then the Rising Cologne. So I kind of flipped it around, but that's okay. I'm very glad to get to review this. And obviously, I'm reviewing this off of a decant that I didn't pay for, but it was sent to me by a friend in the community. So I have to say thank you to Nick for sending me these brilliant decants. These, it's probably 5 ml of juice that he gave me. Very, very generous, very, very kind. But it allows me to do these type of reviews where otherwise there's just no way. It's impossible to do everything. So thank you, Nick, for being generous and sending this decant along. I really got to enjoy smelling Rising Mysore 2. If you have experience with any of the Rising Mysores, 1, 2, or 3, if you have experience with the Mysore Sandalwood soap, if you have experience with what I was talking about as far as real sandalwood and how it's supposed to smell, leave a comment. I love this kind of interaction. This has been a very fun video to make, and I've really, really enjoyed wearing this today. So thank you very much. Cheers, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.